Notre Dame and Georgia on a Saturday night in prime time, and UGA comes away with the victory. You can look at this game probably one of two ways, predicated upon the side, I guess, that you're on. You can look at it and say ultimately the final score was not as close as that game was, because I felt that Georgia dominated pretty much the second half of that football game. And defensively, I thought that they did very good for the majority of the football game. Or you can look at it and go, Notre Dame did pretty good in the second quarter of that football game, and then they played really good late in that football game, and it was kind of a closer game than you would really think it was, and Georgia was able to pull it out. Here's my thing. The second quarter, to me, is when Notre Dame had an opportunity to put this football game away. You get the fumble by Simmons, and you end up scoring a touchdown, which is great. We've seen that a lot this season, where teams get turnovers and they start in enemy territory, inside the red zone, inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line, and they are unable to come away with anything. Saw during the Auburn-Oregon game. Auburn wasn't able to do anything until late, and they had opportunities beforehand, right? So you did what you were supposed to do in that situation. But before that, what were you really doing offensively at all? Which, you know, you can look at it and say neither team was, and I'd concede to that, especially since the score was 0-0 going into the second quarter. But here's my thing, though. Notre Dame, when you look at their offense, was really trying to, I feel like, mimic the Tom Brady style from the New England Patriots in the NFL, right? You had guys on short little out routes into the flat, especially their tight end. You had receivers running hard drive routes, hard dig routes underneath, trying to get them, 2 yards out, catch the football and get them in space and create yardage from there. But the thing is, though, is even Tom Brady and the Patriots throw the football down the field, whether it's a seam route, whether it's taking a chance with a fade route down the sideline, whether it's a straight-up 9 route, whatever the case may be, even they take chances. And we didn't see that at all from Notre Dame until it was basically too late. And when you look at it, Georgia just started jumping on those routes. They really did. Plus, there were some execution problems from Notre Dame. Obviously, 2 interceptions by Ian Book. You had the fumble on the snap that obviously he didn't see coming, that was snapped before he was even ready for it. But the thing about it is, though, to me, when I look at it, I go, why didn't you take some shots down the field into the third quarter? You've already sucked them in by that point. I could see going a whole first half of playing that scheme, right? Especially when you're ahead 10-7, it's justified. And then going into the third quarter, maybe your first possession or even your second possession, and going, I just want to make sure that I've drawn the defense in all the way. And then, bam, first play, maybe a play action, and hit them. But they went to the well way too many times with those screen plays, way too many times with those underneath drive routes, and way too many times with those basically what we used to call pooch passes out there to their tight end, who, by the way, is a hell of a tight end for Notre Dame. The point of what I'm saying is, after a while, you have to take some chances. Georgia adjusted their game plan going into halftime, obviously. They said, look, this isn't working. Jake Fromm had 62 yards passing in the first half. He had 70 yards with 4.5 to go in the third quarter alone. You have to be able to score the ball when your team hasn't created a turnover. You have to be able to do long, sustained drives. And those 3-and-outs that Notre Dame started to have really took a toll on their defense, who I thought played very well for the majority of that football game. Do I think that Georgia is the better football team? To be honest with you, no. Do I think, though, that Georgia outcoached Brian Kelly? Did Kirby Smart outcoach him? Absolutely he did. For whatever reason, Brian Kelly just played very conservative football. And in these types of games, conservative football really doesn't always help you. A couple of weeks ago, Michigan State beat Arizona State beat Michigan State 10-7. And at the end of the football game, Herm Edwards directly in the interview said, "We've got to get better. You're not going to win a lot of football games 10-7. And that could not have been more of a case in point than what we saw with Notre Dame having a 10-7 lead going into halftime, but unable to score until it was basically too late. I'll give them credit. They fought till the end. But if they would have been running some of those play calls beforehand, I think we would have been looking at a very different football game. And before I get into this, rest of this really quick, I got to address this. The fake injury thing. Lest we forget, Georgia, that you guys did that against Clemson. All right? So I don't want to hear it. I don't like it. I think it's nonsense. And that's been a thing since Chip Kelly was at Oregon. Remember that with his high-paced offense? People felt like, people were faking injuries in order to try and get their offense to slow down. And even into the NFL when Chip Kelly was with the Philadelphia Eagles and they were running that offense and having some success with it that first year when Mike Vick got hurt and Nick Foles came in and led that team to the playoffs, there were a lot of people during the course of that time, they would boo thinking that teams were faking injuries. And as we heard the officials say last night, you just can't risk it. You can't give him a penalty and then the kid actually be hurt, right? My thing is, I think it's one of those where you go back and you review it later on as officials, and then you penalize the team there afterwards if it is found out that they were indeed faking and the injuries were not real. I think you penalize them, in any way that you can, whether it's financially, which nobody likes to be hit in their wallet, whether it's, hey, if you're going to be doing this, I'm not going to let you coach a game or two, right? And I'm going to pick the games. So you're not going to coach in the next game against top 5 teams, which, by the way, to close this out, Notre Dame, if I remember correctly, is now 1-18 against top 5 teams since the year 2000. 1-18 with that loss to Georgia last night. I was a believer in Coach Kelly when he helped lead Cincinnati to that 12-0 season. What really upset me was when, right before they were about to play Florida, he took off. And that always bothered me. And I always wondered if he really wanted to coach that game because maybe he was afraid that Urban Meyer, as the head coach of Florida at that time, and Tim Tebow and them were just maybe too good a football team. I always wondered that. And I think maybe the proof could be in the pudding now. I think that he didn't want to lose that game and have a bunch of people jumpy, and I don't think he wanted Notre Dame to back out and say, no. Because, a lot of people will tell you coaching Notre Dame is a dream job. That team could go 0-12 next season, and I think there would be a lot of coaches jumping, right, foaming at the mouth to get an opportunity to say, I'm the head coach of Notre Dame. But I want to ask something to the Irish faithful. With Coach Kelly as your coach, have you ever felt like, yeah, we've got a good chance to win this football game because I know my coach is better than the other team's coach, which is a big part of what college football is all about. The bragging right of getting that next big coach, of having a Dabo Swinney, of having an Urban Meyer, of having a Nick Saban. Look at KU and how excited they were to get Les Miles. They were so excited about it that ESPN did a thing for Les Miles for this season alone. And he's the coach of the Jayhawks. But he's Les Miles. See, that's the deal. So, are you excited that Coach Kelly is your guy? Because I'm going to tell you something, and I understand it was partly justified when he said that, we just want Ian Book to stand in this pocket and throw the football because of that interception that was thrown later on in the football game, and J.R. Reed got his first pick of the year. But who's to say, though, that it was all the quarterback's fault? Was it his fault for making a throw? Absolutely. Was he just trying to make a play and get something going? Absolutely. Was it the wrong time for that? Of course it was. It's never really a good time for a turnover, to be honest with you. Here's the scenario, though. You've got receivers that are just standing around waiting for the ball to come to them because that's what they were coached to do, basically. If you're not going to allow your quarterback to scramble around and move around, then what is the point of a receiver breaking off their route? Now, if Ian Book is scrambling all over the place and the receivers aren't breaking their routes off, then they're really not giving him any help. But if you're told, run your route and that's it, what are you supposed to do? Ian Book did miss some throws. He did have the picks. But I'm going to tell you something. I thought it was just a poor game plan by Notre Dame. I knew going into the second half they were going to adjust. Georgia just started jumping those routes, and that was the end of it. Because that was a hell of an effort play by Ian Book when the bobbled snap did happen, right? He wasn't ready for it. That ball bounced up, and he still almost made a play out of it. But again, his receiver was just standing there, watching him, because that's what he was coached to do. We don't want anybody to move around today. You're containing, you're telling your guys, you're telling your team, don't be you and what you normally do. That tells me that Kelly was a little frightened to play that football game. If you're going to go down, you might as well go down swinging. That's just the way I look at it. I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. You can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. The Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube as well. And don't forget, you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play the Full Court Press by Drew Duncan. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.